No, I was hoping you would do the editing. Actually, I was like, I didn't know your background. I was like, maybe she's like a superstar and loves to like edit and like do audio stuff. I was like, no, she just lifts heavy weights.
That like I don't want people to think I'm capable because then I'm asked to do things. You get what I'm saying? That was your downfall.
Equality, right? That's what you're saying.
Uh, One, and welcome to Between Two Coaches. We're on a mission to make fitness more human. Snark sold separately. I'm Coach Amanda, and I'm joined as always by my co-host,
Coach Nick. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We have a fantastically great episode today and tonight with the amazing run coach and ultrarunner, Robbie Pike, who's also the co-host of our brother podcast. For those of you who may not know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Robbie?
Well, thanks for having me. It's nice to be on the other side of the mic for once, not having to deal with the coming up with questions. I'm Robbie. I live in Rapid City, South Dakota. I'm a father, run coach, ultra runner, normal everyday person. Well, if I take out ultra, I'd be normal.
True.
in a Dakota.
In a Dakota, yes.
The good Dakota, right? Isn't that what they say?
Well, there's some hills here. I wouldn't call them mountains. It's not all prairie, and it gets cold here, but not too bad.
What's right now?
It's 32 and partly sunny.
Okay. Shorts weather.
Yeah.
I guess for you too. I
was in Texas over the weekend, and it was 73 and 76. And on the way home, it started snowing and was like 15, 16 degrees.
Oh, wow.
That's a big change.
What were you
Yeah.
in Texas?
I was pacing a friend at Dinosaur Valley 100K.
Ultras always have the best names, I find, too. Like Javelina, what I can never say right. All the names are always great.
I always called it Javelina, so.
There we go. Got it.
Now.
I know.
There you go.
It was good. It was real good? Question mark. We did our first of 3 Thanksgivings with my mom, so that was super fun. We made a little it was only the 4 of us. We made a little Thanksgiving, or 5 of us, I can't count. And we made a little Thanksgiving meal. My daughter made cupcakes and made them like reindeers. So that was super fun and took forever, but it was good. Yeah, it was a fun weekend. Got in some running, a little bit, a big race weekend with Philly marathon happening, among other races scattered around. So that was fun. Nothing really big to report. I'm excited for the holiday this week. And yeah, how about you, Amanda?
The blur. To remember really what was done in the last week. I'm sure a lot of things that just mesh into one another. I did not have a Thanksgiving yet on Thursday in Queens.
Ooh.
To sister is the best. She by far, in my experience of eating turkeys on Thanksgiving, has made the best tasting turkey so you forget it's a turkey.
You need that. Yeah, that's a skill.
Otherwise, she can be a dry girl, as in turkey. And
you lather it in gravy, right? That's how you fix it.
What she does, what I know is that I bring nothing to the table. I bring Tupperware to the table. I don't have a skill
to take home leftovers, right?
That's a fact.
Yeah.
So my skills are, I don't exist in that sphere. Looking forward, and it's a full work week for me. So otherwise, just moving along.
End of November. It's so late this year, but yeah. Robbie, what will you do for Thanksgiving?
I will be working. So, yeah, can't pass up, the holiday pay. So, might as well
Yeah.
go and work and make some money. I was off 2 days last week in Texas, so do my thing.
Giving time there. I feel you on that. That was kind of sit around working this week was since I was just in Buenos Aires 2 weeks ago. I was like, I kind of have to get the point now. So let's go. So we have our friend Robbie on here to talk a little bit about his story. Why don't you tell us about you outside being an ultra runner and a run coach? But as we know in the recovery space, it parallel to to our quote unquote real life. Talk to us a little bit about your journey and your addiction.
So my addiction started with, now that I know after being in recovery, was a lot of childhood trauma. Drank a lot, smoked a lot of weed, and just kept finding myself in this constant circle that I would go through. And I would try to get out of it, do some things, but I was never really dedicated to it. It was the type of, well, I'll just quit doing this and I'll quit doing that. Then I will, come back and see where I'm at and try to regulate my use of those substances. And once I would, open that door and go back in, I'd be right back where I was before. So I finally, you know, had some stuff going on in life and moved here to Rapid City to be with my daughter. And I was good for the first 4 months. Then I got right back in that circle. And what I noticed with what happened with me the progression would just get worse. So this time it was really bad. I was drinking a lot. I was high all the time. I would use cannabis as what I thought to get rid of my social anxiety. Then I'd be so high that I'd feel paranoid. So I'd start drinking to mellow it out a little bit. Then I would start getting drunk and be like, well, I better go get high again because I got to chill out. And it just got really bad this time around. And I was in Gillette, Wyoming, hanging out with my mom. And earlier that week, I already made the decision to stop using cannabis. Cannabis was my crutch. My drinking was just there, but I use cannabis every day. A lot of times from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed. Then if there was any social engagements, I would drink. I was never a, you know, hide and drink. I would do that with cannabis all the time. But so I made the decision earlier that week to stop using cannabis. Then I was hanging out with my mom and we were at this Mexican restaurant and we shared a margarita. And I told her this is going to be my last margarita. And she's like, what? I said, I need to quit drinking. And she's like, okay. It was a shitty margarita too. So that helped. So at that point, Monday was the day with, no cannabis. Then Friday was my last drink. So Saturday was my first day of no alcohol. Then, every day, as with addiction, when you're trying to stop something that consumes every thought, every action you do, it's second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour, until you start to get some time under you to realize that, you can live life without these substances or whatever addiction you may have. It was really hard those first 90 days. I was white knuckling sobriety. From the time I woke up, it was everything I could do to stay sober from the time I went to bed. Then I found this group on Instagram, and they were starting weekly meetings in April. So I was chatting with them, then started these weekly meetings in April. And that's where, I learned a lot of tools and found connection with others, that I'm not alone, and could be very vulnerable with these groups of people. It's online, it's just a Zoom meeting. People from pretty much all over the world get on there and sit and talk about what's going on in our lives and our addictions and all that stuff. And after a few meetings and talking, in private with some of these people, I was doing it all wrong. Yeah, I was sober. That's the main goal. But, when you quit any addiction for whatever reason, there has to be some growth in there, right? Because if there's no growth, you're going to go right back to it really easily. If whatever circumstance happens, then it makes you want to go back to whatever it was. So then, I didn't know the difference between recovery and sobriety. Sobriety is stop abusing the substance you're using, and recovery is moving on and growing. And one of what social media and society wants us, everyone to think, is that you got to hit a rock bottom. But everyone's rock bottom is different. It's not what you see on TV. Like my rock bottom, nothing happened. I didn't hurt anyone, didn't hurt myself, those type of things. And, that stigma is really scary for people. They're thinking about making that step, like, well, I haven't hit a rock bottom. I haven't had, a divorce or DUI or gone to jail for drugs or anything like that. So then, it was us as fitness coaches, we give our clients tools, little tools to help them throughout the week, if it's with eating or just the way they feel mentally before they have to go into a workout or any of that stuff. And that's when I started realizing, this goes hand in hand with what I learned when I was doing all my personal training classes, that, you know, you got to get into they got to want to do it first, right? We can't make anyone do it. Then when they want to do it, you got to keep drawing out what makes them happy and keep pushing them forward and give them those tools. And I learned lots of tools during that time. But the hardest part is, I was using substances from the age of 15 to 44. That's a big chunk of my life. I wasn't even an adult at that time. And anytime any emotions came up, I would just go use. Learning how to deal with my emotions once I became sober, I didn't even really know what a lot of those emotions were, definition. Like I would feel them, but I didn't know how to react towards them. So then all this new stuff starts happening where I have to figure out what's going on in my life and, really how to start moving forward and sit in a lot of my own shit and figure it out, use my tools, use my connections, and, set boundaries, which I never did in my life, was set boundaries. I'm a people pleaser. So that was one of the big things is, learning about why I people please was always to fit in. So that fueled a lot of my substance abuse, was just to fit in with others, feel the need to be wanted. That's part of the childhood trauma with my father, was, never feeling wanted by him. So I would search it in other ways that weren't healthy. And it's actually Thanksgiving will be my 2 years of sobriety.
Congratulations.
It's just been, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, now it's huge. But it's also like there's a lot of stuff, stuff that goes into it, but now with the coping skills, like every once in a while I'll get a craving to want to get high. But that's when things are good. Like everything's going good, it's a nice summer day. I feel good and all that. When things are bad now, there's like rewiring my brain. There's something in the back of my brain that's like, don't you think about that? And that took a long time to get to this point where I've rewired my brain not to just run away from my issues.
Excuse me. It's what's interesting to me, I think I had listened to you recently, another podcast that I found through you, Robbie, through the glass recovery. You were what had initially sparked my interest in having this conversation with you was the way that podcast in general, and the way that you've spoken about in the past, this tackling cross addictions and recovery, and this idea of cross addiction and transfer addiction. And I've spoken on here about my story with eating disorder recovery. And I've also been, not due to addiction, but I've been so, my husband is so, and we have also spoken about addiction and this idea of transfer addiction with Dr. Stephanie Roth Goldberg, who is a sports psychotherapist, who the majority of her clients are either with eating disorders or disordered eating, and how she sees alcoholism and other substance abuse come up in her clients. So would you mind just talk to us a little bit about the issues or the challenges with cross addiction and this transfer addiction?
Yeah. So, I started running I really got into what I know now is fitness when I first got my bike when I was 5. I was always the one that would go, do whatever. And I'm like, I'm not done. I want to keep going. And um, I mountain bike for a long time, and we'd go ride and we'd be done. And I'd be like, I'm not done. Let's go back out. Let's do it again. So I started running in 2011, right after I got my personal training certificate. I started in 2010, but my first ultra was in 2011. And I was using a lot, it was just part of my life. Then when I stopped, I would, go out for runs, and it was horrible. In the beginning, I thought that I could just start running again and, really outrun my problems, which I found did not work. And this is another thing that society talks about, and a lot of ultrarunners have talked about their addiction and how they quit and they transferred it to running. And, a lot of times society will say that addiction to health and working out and whatever it is you do is healthy. So I kind of had that in my head. Like, well, I'm sober now and I'll just get back out there and do my thing. Well, it didn't work out. It crumbled really fast. I would talk to people and I would be super anxious when I'd be out running. I'd get back to my car and start it. And what I usually would do when I get done with the run, I'd just get high. Well, I couldn't do that anymore. So I'd start the car and start driving, and all this anxiety would just flow through me because I had to come back to real life, right? I could go out and spend a couple hours on the trail. And at that point in time, I was just still numbing the pain of everything that was going on. Then as soon as I got in the car and started, it was like, step back into the real world. And I didn't know how to deal with that. And I just kind of stopped running and was talking with some other athletes that, had addiction issues, and they could give me a little bit, but they couldn't relate to what I was going through. And then I started talking with some other people, and a big thing when you're in recovery is doing stuff with intention. It should be in a lot of people's life, doing stuff with intention, down to every little thing you do, doing it with intention and just not mindlessly doing stuff. So my first cross addiction after becoming sober was I was addicted to sobriety, which people think, when I tell this to them, they think it's a little different because, well, you should be. And I said, well, I picked up all those unhealthy habits that I was doing while I was using. Now I'm sober, but I'm not recovering. I'm just still doing the same stuff. I'm still running from my problems. I won't sit in them. I won't figure them out, all those other things. And, cross addiction can come down to a lot of people when they become sober, they'll switch to food because they need something to take their mind off of not whatever they're using. So then they'll start eating a lot. And then, whatever their substance, they may start gaining weight. Then self-worth starts going downhill. Then they'll find themselves in that same loop that they were when they were drinking or using. Then, it can give you a setback or you can work through it. But the cross addiction part doesn't get talked about a lot because once you make the decision to the abuse part, everyone thinks that it's okay. Like, oh, you're just eating now. That's okay. You're sober. Well, they're just feeding their addiction with food now. And I was feeding my addiction with running and trying to be healthy again. And recently, I it's going to be 2 years. I ran off and on these last 2 years, not much, but in the last couple of weeks, I finally got out for a run and things felt normal. Like I felt good about those runs and I had intentions for those runs and I was able to listen to music again. I was able to look at the trees and the animals. And when I first started running, it was more of the adventure part of it to get out there and spend multiple hours in the mountains. Then it just became a mindless thing where I was just out there getting miles and whatever else it was. And after sobriety, those same things kept happening. And now I feel like I can say that I'm back to where I was when I first started running, that there's freedom there. There's intention there. A lot of us, even multiple runners will say, church is out on the trail or out on the road, doesn't matter. That's where I go and do my thing. But I know I can't escape now. The biggest thing I learn is I can't use what people would call healthy in society as an escape because I'll end up right back where I was, even though I'm sober, but mentally I'll be going backwards. So that's just kind of where I'm at with, how I feel about cross addiction and transfer addiction, whatever, people call it. That yes, it can be good in the beginning, but you really need to check yourself as you're going through it because you'll go down the same path when you transfer it that you're already on. You may not realize it, but you'll get there. And if it's too late, you're going to have to start the whole process again with whatever you transferred to. And it's already hard enough to, stop the addiction that you have, let alone to have to do it again with something different. And for me, it's just like when it can be healthy for you and society deems it as healthy, that one's a little harder to break that cycle because, I used to take sick days to go run. And I never thought that was a big deal. Now I look back and I'm like, well, that's, the same thing as an alcoholic calling in sick to go drink. I used to do that all the time. I would lie to family members to go run. And I'm like, holy shit, I didn't even recognize that. And I just don't want people to go down that road where they have to start lying about their eating or anything else that they may transfer to because you're right back where you were.
Yeah, I find all that very interesting and really along the lines of, having this, not really addressing what's going on and sort of having this other area you just sort of pour into. We talk about this a lot in this podcast about healthy. It's because it's fitness or something and it's healthy, then it should be looked at as good no matter what. But when you're not addressing the underlying issues or you're just immediately jumping into something else with the same way, it's just going to come up that way, in that same new area, or maybe even bad in the other area because you haven't really addressed either. You sort of just jumped into something else.
Yeah, I agree with that because, I talk with a lot of people and I've seen what happens when they don't catch that transfer quickly. Putting on a lot of weight, then self-worth going down because they're not happy in their own body, and other things too where they may pick up another substance because they can't sleep or going to the doctor and getting on pharmaceutical medication to deal with stuff, which is, it's okay. But as we know, once you get on a medication and you get addicted to that medication, just because a doctor prescribed it doesn't mean you're going down the right road. So there's a lot of things where you just have to be careful, and it's already hard enough when you're doing all this stuff, but to be mindful. And what really helped me was the big picture. Like, who this is what I always like to say to people is, I wrote chapter 1, close chapter 1, and I get to write chapter 2. And I get to write chapter 2 how I want it to be, not how I made it with chapter 1. So when I think of it that way, it's more of a, where do I want my life to go? Who am I now? And, you know, how can I help other people? How can I help myself? And then just how to be a better person. Because in the past, a lot of times on my mind was, when's the next drink? When am I going to get high again? And that consumed my thoughts. And now it's just like, well, everyone has a shitty day. How can I make this person's day better? It could be words. It could be a lot of things, right? So I'm excited to write chapter 2 with the way I want it to be.
Something that you said about even you had mentioned folks who are using other substances, whether that's food, exercise, gambling. I mean, the list goes on of things that society has deemed either a health promoting behavior or legal. Health promoting being, somebody who loves running or somebody who only eats clean, it considers themselves a clean eater, right? And is super restrictive. And you were talking about that loop. It's so tough to, when you're in the recovery space, and it's tough to have a conversation sometimes with folks because the beliefs around what society has deemed like a bad addiction versus a good addiction can be really hard for other people to wrap their head around. I've had conversations with people in the rooms that I spent time in with my eating disorder. There was a lot of cross addiction. I had a lot of folks in there who were also in AA and NA and SLA. And it was hard for even folks in that room to be like, well, I mean, at least she's exercising, as opposed to gravitating towards the substance she was using or what have you. And it's really, people don't have a hard time understanding that no, it's not a comparison. It's not better. We've just taken one issue and transferred it to another one that society has deemed more kosher, I guess. I don't know. That was a bit of I just hear it a lot, and it's something that I feel a little icky about.
I'm right there with you because, I've experienced it. I've watched a lot of other people go through it or are still struggling with it. A lot of people, when they stop whatever they're doing, they go see a psychiatrist and they say, you have ADHD. So then they put them on meds, and that's their choice. But what was the root of your addiction? Childhood trauma, tons of things. And you think by stopping this, that those thoughts aren't still going to go through your head. And now then when you're sitting in with it and you have to deal with it and work through it, now you think you are crazy and your mind won't stop. Our minds are awesome. We can do a lot of stuff with them, but when you numb them out for so long with whatever you're doing, gambling, pornography, all those addictions that we could use to run from whatever we're running from, once you have to sit in it and deal with it, that's when the work comes in. And I don't like to hear people say, well, I've been sober or whatever for a year and I still can't fall asleep and whatever else it is, I'm going to go see a doctor. That's another thing, too, is where society, Western medicine, in my opinion, is all big pharma and about making money. It's a Band-Aid, right? It's not not about helping people. It's about keep making money. So just put this Band-Aid on, and this Band-Aid will fix the problem with whatever the pill is or whatever it is. But until you rip that Band-Aid off and you really get to the root of it, and it's going to take a lot of work and it's going to take a lot of help. You're going to have to be super vulnerable. You're going to have to talk about stuff you do not want to talk about, whether with it's, in therapy or counselor or a group you might find. There's no magic pill to dealing with any of this. And, you just got to keep on taking it day by day. And another thing is to remember that you're still here and you still have a life. People love you. Everything's going to be okay. In the end, everything will be okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't want to do that work either. Like that's the reality, right? Like sometimes it's not just them getting pushed on them, but like they just don't want to do any of that hard stuff, and they just want to, be better with some medicine or something that makes it all go away. When having those really tough conversations is hard and vulnerable and scary, but that's the work that gets you there and gets you through it. Without that, you're just sort of in limbo.
Yeah, it's like people don't want to, run a marathon that's never ran a marathon before. They're willing to put that work in, right? Just to cross that finish line. It could take them however length of time. But if they're just willing to put that work in themselves mentally, it's it could be harder, it could be not as hard, whatever the circumstances are. But it really takes someone to dig deep and go, I just want to be happy. I want to feel joy again. And going back into that, cross addiction, sometimes we'll disguise that joy in some kind of thing of crossing a finish line or a competition or whatever it may be. But then you talk to that person 2 weeks later and they're not training anymore. Guess where they're at? The good old runner blues, right? You finish one race and, for us ultrarunners, we're right back on ultra sign up the same night because we don't want to stop that journey. And that those journeys are awesome, that you grow so much. But I always want to remind people you're growing in one direction, and that is training. You're getting fit. You can run faster. You can do all these things. But what about yourself? What about who you are? What you do for yourself first, then what you can do for others, your family, your friends, your work. I don't want you to put all that aside to get a medal.
There's a lot of comfort in chasing a high when it comes to addiction. So people don't want to be still with any sort of sadness that they are experiencing. And I know that you're talking about that, but I think that like that's a part of it is they're chasing a finish line. And when it comes to sobriety and then ultimately actually working in recovery, there is no finish line. And I think that's one of the, and maybe you can share some others if you haven't already, one of the misconceptions about sobriety. I said congratulations to you, right? Because you're 2 years sober. But you said, and this is the biggest takeaway of that is like you were working on your sobriety, but now like you recognize the difference between that and recovery. So, and it's a big difference. So maybe that if there are any other misconceptions you think people have around addiction and sobriety recovery.
Yeah, I think with, like you said in the beginning, it was just like, well, I'll just get sober and everything will be okay. Well, that's not the case at all. That's when shit gets real, and that's when the work comes in, and that's where recovery comes in. Yeah, you may give up your addiction, but what are you going to do after that? And this is another, society thing. Like you send someone to rehab, right? They're at their rock bottom. You send them to inpatient rehab. The family members think that when this person gets out, they're going to be perfectly fine. And they're not. They are just starting that journey. And I talk with a lot of people in the recovery world, and we have to remind them that this is a battle you're going to be fighting for the rest of your life. Not so much be it the substance you were using, it's not using that substance and how you go about your life, because I will ask them, well, why were you using that? Then they give you a bunch of reasons. Okay, so you think now that you take away that substance that those issues aren't going to be there? And a lot of times they don't have an answer for that because they've never thought that far ahead. They're so into it where it's just stay sober, or, whatever else, they might have to be going through. And that's one of the big stigmas that, frustrates me, because you aren't going to just be okay. There's going to be ups and downs. I talk with some people that have been 40 plus years sober, and, their advice to me is the shit never stops. Yeah, I don't drink anymore, but there's just life, and we have to deal with life. And, for as many years you're using, you think you're just going to undo all that in whatever, a year or 2 years, it doesn't matter, whatever their time sober. Do you think you're going to undo that in that time? The easy part is using those substances, right? That's the easy part. But undoing that, depend how, strong and how bad you want it. And for me, I had to come to the terms is, I want this really bad. It'll be the rest of my life. And I may die not getting there. And there's no crossing the finish line there. It's just, that's it. And people don't want to hear that, right? They think that's worst advice in the world, but it's the truth. I mean, just in society, how many people have you seen relapse, whatever their addiction is? They think everything's okay. I can just moderate. I can do whatever the thing wants. Then, you open that door, then what's to stop you after you open that door? Nothing. You've opened it back up, and you can either say, whoa, I don't like this, or shit, I missed out on all this, and right back there doing it again. So, in the end, everyone has different circumstances and all that stuff. But one thing, I'd like to say is, when it doesn't matter what the addiction is, you're going to have to figure out how to live life without that for the rest of your life. And that's really deep for a lot of people, because, I'll use just running as a addiction, that you start to identify as a runner. You surround yourself with nothing but runners, everything's running, right? Then if you took that away, how would you identify yourself? Like, you've lost yourself. Then your self-worth, and you're like, who am I? And you don't even know who you are. Well, that's anytime you stop one of those addictions, because they take such a strong hold in your life that you have to find out what, is going to drive you. But you really have to find out who you really are again. And depending how long, you're using, it's just going to be one of those battles that you're going to have to live with. But it's a good battle. It's, people should wake up and look forward to this battle. You shouldn't paint it in a negative light. And I don't get to drink today, and I don't get to go hang out at the bar with my friends, because those friends aren't your friends anymore. They were acquaintances you hung out with for drinking. Same thing with running people. You might meet, Jim Bob at the trail on Saturday morning, and you meet every Saturday with them. All you do is run with them. Do you even really know who this person is? You share time on the trail together, or on the road, or you're just acquaintances. And learning how to build those relationships without those addictions, and find people that you could call up in the middle of the night, or whatever may be the reason, that are there for you. Like, I'd call Jim Bob in the middle of the night, and he wouldn't answer his phone, because he's like, why is he calling me? Type of thing. just because we're acquaintances, we don't have a real relationship. So I guess that's my rant on on that.
I'll give you a rant. That didn't feel very ranty. Were you going to say something, Nick?
Nope.
That's no, you drew some solid parallels there. So I guess we spoke about this slippery slope, right? What having an unhealthy and potentially addictive dependency on fitness or running may look like. You mentioned, I know you said it in kind of, I don't know what the phrase is. You looked at you took a sick day to run. And I'm going to guess that more people than you think are listening to this podcast right now and can identify with something like that, or lying to your family, or even missing out on social events because you have to prioritize whatever the thing is. Prioritizing whatever the thing is over your family, over something that is not that thing. And what happens is, oftentimes, you mentioned your identity being tied to one thing, whether it's running or being, a fitness fanatic. Oftentimes, unfortunately, it takes something like injury or illness or what have you that stops somebody in their tracks, and they're like, I don't have anything else. What am I supposed to do now that I cannot do what? Now that I am not able to run, now that I'm not able to spend X amount of hours at the gym. And that's really, really unfortunate that it takes something like that's quote unquote their rock bottom, in order to recognize that, to have an entire toolbox of options for you that bring you joy throughout your day is critical before we get to that point.
Yeah, for sure. We as humans get so caught up in what we may think brings us joy until it's taken away from us. Then I've talked to countless runners that they get a stress fracture because they're overtraining and they're laid up on the couch and they're driving themselves crazy because they've watched enough TV or have been on their phone long enough. Then you just watch their mental health dwindle away because they didn't have something in that toolbox to go, well, if I can't do this, what could I do? Because they feel like the only way that they get validation from other people is through their sport or whatever they may do. And, we see it with pro sport players. They get injured or have a career ending injury, then they just disappear, right? But then you see those strong ones that start a business or start doing speaking or, you name it. Then they come back stronger. Then they found a new joy in life and going down another path, another journey, and we get to watch them grow. But we don't hear about those people that just completely disappear and self-isolate because they're one. And of course, they're going, not everyone, but I'm going to say they're going to play the victim and, say, well, I can't run anymore. So, or whatever it may be. And so I'm just nothing anymore because that's the only thing that they built themselves off of. So in the end, like in the recovery journey, lots up and downs. But if you got some faith, you got your group, they're always there to bring you back up. Everyone in this world is going through something all the time. They may talk to you about it, they may not talk to you about it. You may see it, you may not see it. But we all have stuff going on, and a lot of people struggle with reaching out for help. It's sometimes gets painted in a bad way to reach out for help, especially for men that have grown up in a family where men are not taught to show their emotions. They're got to be the tough ones, all that other stuff. So, it's going to be hard, but you have to find something else. When I wasn't running, I had to come to the terms of, FOMO, not being in races, being able to go out for that group run, just going out for adventure and myself. But what I learned to do was, if I wasn't going out on that run, was to take the time to learn about myself, look at something that I wanted to research and learn about, fill that time with stuff where I still grow and I'm not going backwards, and it took a lot of, I'm really stubborn, so it wasn't easy in the beginning. But this is something I talked about with my clients with is life's going to happen. You're going to miss a long run on the weekend. So what? Who cares? Because I'm sure you guys have got, well, I'll just make it up. I can make up some miles tomorrow, then Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. Like, no, just don't worry about it. Just do what's prescribed for the next day. But no buts. Like, it's okay. And it got to the point where I was just like waking up on a Saturday, because usually, woke up before the sun come up and was out doing my thing. And I was like, well, I get to wake up and hang out with my daughter or drink a cup of coffee and, catch up on emails or whatever it may be and watch something I wanted to watch, and just been able to, you know, rewire that to be okay with it, that life still goes on and I'm not missing out on something, was okay. But I think a lot of people struggle with that because they think they're going to lose something. But we all know in the end, you're not losing anything as long as you pick it up the next day or the next day after that, whatever the thing's going on. But it's just life.
Yeah. And there's like, one of the things you said, there's the generation of men our age that can't express feelings. We're taught never to have feelings. Like, didn't do it as children, didn't grow up with it, and now don't know how to work through any of that stuff. And it's, I'm lucky that I was mostly raised by mom, and feelings were something that was a part of my life since I was a kid. So it's easier to kind of understand what I'm going through at times. But I do understand there's a generation of men who were taught never to have any feeling. And it makes it hard when you have to work through and, understand why you feel this way or why something is affecting you, when it's easier just to ignore it and, pretend like it will just go away.
Yeah. My mom raised me and very, open with all that stuff. But what I've learned is it's really hard to share those emotions and feeling with other men, which, watching a grown man cry was something I only saw in the movies, or because, I never saw my dad or my grandpa cry or anything like that. But just watching a grown man cry was really hard for me, because then it was like, well, who the hell am I? You know, I would be so ashamed to cry in front of another man because, you take away my man card. So that's something I've had to learn too, is in our recovery group, well, there's a lot of women, there's a few men in there, but sometimes when, we're having discussions, the women are very vulnerable and open up. The men in our group are super vulnerable and open up, but they have a hard time sharing what they're feeling with another man, which I understand. But the beauty in it is that when we start to open up and start to tell our story and can relate, it's just humans and not, gender specific. There's something to that where they start to realize that men have feelings too. And I've watched a lot of different people change their thoughts on men because their dad was the strong, tough guy that never showed emotion, never cried. Then you'll have a man on something crying and over something, whatever, right? Just life. It just, there's a beauty in it. And I understand that from the point of, evolving, where men were the strong ones and went hunted and gathered food and did all their stuff. But now we all have emotions and feelings, and it's okay to talk about it.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm thinking about the grown men in my life who have shown me it's okay to express how they feel. And that's exactly how I would describe it, Robbie. It's a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful thing. So you spoke a little bit about maybe we can help people who are listening to this. If somebody's listening to this and either themselves or someone they love is battling with an addiction or behaviors that they believe could be an addiction, where would you point them?
I don't want to say this, but I would point them to social media. There's a lot of outreach programs, AA, on and on for the people that are dealing with it. There's just so much out there. Facebook, there's a lot of groups. If you just type in recovery or sobriety, you're going to find a bunch of groups. And, I always tell people, find a group. If it's not for you, move on, find another group. Recovery's not a one size fits all thing. You got to find people you're comfortable with, you can be vulnerable with, find the connection with, then they'll be your biggest supporters. Then what a lot of people don't remember is you being able to talk about your issues supports them.
Yes.
Because they'll bring up stuff that they might have put away for years. Then you talk about something you're going through and they're like, oh, I put that way deep, and boom, here it is again. So, social media is a great place. There's a lot of wonderful podcasts out there on the topic too, and you can listen to their podcasts and you can usually find something with their social media too, to reach out to them, to find a connection of they might have some resources to help you with. I haven't looked into much of, well, let me rephrase this. So the rehabs are there. They're there for a reason. If you're to the point where you feel like you need to check yourself in a rehab, that's great. But one thing that I want to tell people is you're going to be put in there with people that don't want to be in rehab. You're going to get people in there that have been court ordered to go to rehab for whatever the reason may be, DUIs, drug felonies. So you're going to be in there and you might not connect with those people. So if you're thinking about that, do some research on a rehab or an outpatient place. There's a lot of more holistic places out there now too that take an easier approach on, identifying why you're there with your abuse, your addiction, and can help you work through it. AA's there. There's an AA in pretty much every city or town. A lot of times, though, I hear is I live in a little small town, and everyone knows my car, and if they see me parked out in front of AA, everyone's going to have a problem. So then you run into a lot of that too, where people want the help, but they're scared of what other people will think of them. So that's another one. That's why social media makes it easy, because you can hide behind your computer or your phone and find a group or, reach out and message people that way.
The other solution is for them to move to New York City. That's the other solution. You didn't mention that, Robbie.
Oops. Move to New York City.
Move to New York City. No. I think the in-person meetings are wonderful, and they are wonderful if you feel comfortable, like you said. But I will say that if you are somebody who is local to New York City, I will say just there are the in-person anonymous groups there aren't as many as there were before the pandemic, but they are still quite active, and that all can be found online.
Yeah. Most of this, a lot of this stuff can be found online in your own privacy. And, also, you may talk to friends or family that have struggled with it and they're doing better now. They might have some ways to help you get the help you need, and, however you need to deal with it. There's always that way too. There's a lot of those podcasts out on recovery, they have, people in recovery themselves, or they'll have people that work in recovery centers. There's just a long list of ways to research it. If you're, on the fence about it, you're going to have to do some work for yourself. I would hate to, you tell someone and they drive you to a rehab. As we know in fitness, this is something you would have to want to do and want to work through it. We've all forced clients to do burpees and they hate us.
I've never programmed a burpee in my life.
They never want to do. No,
I swear. But
No.
but I understand the sentiment. I understand what you're saying. I understand.
Yeah.
For me, it's like split squats. I don't think
there's-
people love those, but they have to get themselves there.
No. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you can even, if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me. I'll help guide anyone anywhere they need to go. They need someone to talk to. I'll listen.
Love that. And on the run coaching side, can people reach out to you to see if you're taking clients or?
Yeah, they can reach out to me. I'll be taking 3 to 4 clients for 2025, coached all the way from 5K to 100 milers. So I usually work with more of the, trail athletes and ultramarathon stuff, but I've worked with plenty of people in the other worlds. And
he means the roadies for those. Robbie's like, is this a safe space? This isn't Golden Hour Adventures. I'm not sure I can use the same terminology. It is a safe space. It sure is.
Okay. And I also offer strength training and, multiple different ways of plans. When I first got into personal training, I worked with the special clients, you might say. I worked with a lot of obese people that couldn't move very well because of whatever issues they were having. After I got out of school, I got hired on as an instructor. Then I created police academy programs and fire academy programs for the academies there. I've worked with tons of different people from all walks of life. So I'm not just restricted to running. I just want to help people meet whatever goal they have.
He's an all bodies is welcome kind of trainer. We love to hear that. We love to hear that. So where can the folk, oh, wait. Should we do our special questions first, Coach Nick?
We should. Let's do those. All right. Super secret questions. Are you ready? Here we
In front
go.
of him because he's done his. No, I'm just kidding.
Question the first. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, that's a good one. The best question, best piece of advice. It's simple. Everything's going to be okay.
Good. I like that. Very simple and very on the point, but very true. All right. That was an easy one. Here could they get harder.
Perfect.
Question the second. What's one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
That I'm quarter Japanese.
2 coaches today. Quarter Japanese. Have you been to Japan?
I have not. Maybe one day.
You got to bring 100% of yourself to Japan. Yeah, I've heard good. Not just 25%. Yeah, I've heard good things. I haven't gone over there yet either.
Yeah, me either.
Maybe I can become a roadie and run Tokyo.
Don't threaten us.
We'll all do it. We're done.
A good time. I don't know that I will. A golden hour time. Nick will go with you. Okay.
Yeah.
Golden hour time.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right. The last question. Question number 3. What's something you wish more people understood about your industry?
Ooh. First off, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. People have different goals, and whatever those goals are for those people. Just because other people don't think those goals should be something they have. And I had to have another one. Well, this one's just for me, that I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it for you to get what you want from me.
This is illegal, but I'm the host, so I get to do this. I'm so sorry. What is one thing that you wish more folks understood about addiction? Bubba agrees. He wants to hear it too.
He wants to know. The biggest thing is I've never met a person that has not struggled with some kind of addiction. From coffee to reading books, all of us are wired in some kind of a way with an addiction.
I like that.
Yeah, me too.
Robbie.
Well, you got 100. Good job.
Awesome.
Even the 25% of you. Yeah, Bubba agrees. All right. Robbie, can you share with everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. That's usually where I live. I'm not a heavy social media person. I don't even have to look up what my handle is because I don't even remember. Instagram is runshills605. That's if you want to message me there, that's where I'm most active. Then you could also message me at Golden Hour Adventures if you want. It's our Instagram for our podcast.
Love that. Love that. Well, everyone listening, we thank you for listening. We have one more episode. Oh, also, Robbie, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I did it in terrible order because I, for one, this is my bedtime. So thank you, Robbie, for joining us. Thank you, Nick, for being you. I'd like to thank, who else would I, maybe Beyonce, whoever else is listening, thank you for being here. We have one more episode for season 1 that's happening next week. This episode will come out on Thanksgiving, and we are so grateful to have everyone listening and so grateful to be a part of your whatever experience, whether it's your run, your walk, or sitting on the couch, all that in a bag of chips. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and you can reach out to us at any time at betweentwocoaches@gmail.com or via Instagram. And we will see you next week for the last episode of season 1.
Bye.